So, how do you define success in life, in your marriage, in parenthood, and in your business? And that question, I think about that question a lot as it pertains to my business. What is my definition of done, and how will I ever reach, and will I ever reach success, and what does that look like? So, I had a goal to run Boston, and I like sports. So sports has a very finite beginning and a finite end, and you always know if you're successful. And one of the most simplistic of sports is a foot race. You only need a pair of sneakers and to go outside. When I had the goal to run Boston, I started out and it took 9 years. 9 years, and along the way I learned a lot of important lessons. So I wanted to share those here tonight. Those lessons are about training, being prepared. Your family is what ends up being the most important thing in life, and surrounding yourself with people that are better than yourself, someone that will push you to do better. And finally, never giving up. So when I started the journey to do Boston, I wanted to run the New York Marathon, which is one of the top races to qualify for Boston. It took several years for me to get to that point. And when I finally gained entry, I trained just enough. I was looking for that time that I needed to get in order to go to Boston. And I didn't train, and I cheated basically. I trained just enough for what I thought I had to do. But that doesn't work because you have to be better than game day. And so I learned when I went to Boston, because I was short a minute to 26 miles, I didn't make the time by a minute and a half. And I realized I could have just trained a little bit better. I could have just done a little bit more and I would have made it, but I didn't. So a couple years later, I teamed up with friends that were training for the Ironman. So they were above and beyond what I was doing. They kept me on track. They pushed me to do better than I would have ever done by myself. And I was held accountable, and that really was the main thing, is I couldn't skip practices because now I had people I was training with. So we went to Savannah, and this time I made the time that I needed. So 2013, I signed up to go to Boston, and the Boston Marathon is one of the most awesome events for a novice. I don't think there's another event in the world where you'll have 500,000 people cheering for you to reach the finish line. But 2 blocks from the finish line, I heard a really loud noise. And at first I thought it was fireworks, but immediately after that there was a second blast. And it was really odd because I looked around the crowd and everyone knew, like we knew something had happened and something very wrong had happened. So they closed off the course, and it's strange how people can be so horrible, but at the same time, true kindness comes out, because all the spectators, they brought out food, water, blankets, sweatshirts, and just really took care of all the runners. My family was going to be at the finish line. So one of the first things I did was borrow a cell phone, and I did get a hold of my husband. Luckily, they had been trapped in traffic, and they hadn't quite made it there. So for the next several hours, the transportation system was shut down, the cell phones were jammed, and we had no communication. I had other family that had made it to the finish line, but I didn't know where they were. So this feeling of being completely alone and raw and just exposed until later in the day we finally got together. But what I realized from that is nothing else really matters. You know, your loved ones and their well-being, that's really all it comes down to. 2 blocks from the finish line, I had to go back the next year. And the next year, I entered again. And if you're a runner, you know that at a race, you don't change things. You wear the same shoes, same clothes, you eat the same things. But I kind of threw caution to the wind and went out for seafood dinner and, didn't pay attention to those rules. So about mile 21, here come my scallops. And I traumatized this poor little family on the side of the road. And I ended up in the medical tent. So 2 IVs, a nap, some fresh clothes, and probably about 2 hours later, I actually felt good again. The race was basically closing down and I had 5 miles to go. So this is kind of what it looked like as I finished the race. They were literally sweeping the streets. This van is called the Sweep Bus. It went by me with people hanging out going, "Get on!" And I ended up finishing behind that guy who juggled the entire way. And it's like a thing, it's called joggling. Never heard of it. But I did finish, and it took me like 7 hours, but I didn't care because my definition of done was crossing that finish line and the fact I didn't have to come back. So I sort of tell these things because I try to apply this in my business now. I remember I have to train, and you can never be too prepared. So you have to train really hard. I try and surround myself with people that are smarter than me. My EO forum group, this group here, everyone that I can latch onto that will push me to do better. And if everything was stripped away, I know that my family is really the most important thing, and my loved ones. And then finally, the idea of never giving up. So thank you.